welcome to another episode of Unpacking Love. I'm so excited to be bringing this amazing topic to you all. So, for everybody who listened to the last episode, you guys got to hear a story time from my guest. Shout out to Keisha, who was talking about her experiences with the whole cheating thing. So, being cheated on and then being on the other side of the cheating. So today I'm so excited to be doing this episode because I have Kylie in the house, and Kylie is in her last year of her PhD program in psychology. So this is going to be a really, really insightful episode, and I'm just looking forward to hearing all the things that she has to say around rebuilding trust after cheating happens, and then also talking about other things that come along with cheating, like guilt and all other things. So Kylie, welcome to the podcast, girl. How's it going?
It's going well. I'm so excited to be here. How are you doing, Michelle?
I'm excited to have you. I'm good. I'm so excited to have somebody who knows about psychology and, just being able to speak to someone who's looked into some of these things to share with all of us. Because I'm sure there's some people out there who've experienced cheating and maybe are in the process of trying to rebuild. So I'm sure you're going to have lots to share with us, and we're definitely looking forward to that. So I guess I'll open with this question. What happens to trust, or like what happens to a relationship in general after someone cheats?
I think it's different in every relationship to some degree, but in terms of, let's first define cheating. So cheating can be an emotional or sexual activity that occurs outside some agreed upon relationship boundary. And that relationship boundary can be explicitly talked about within, where if we're talking about two people, right? Or it can be kind of understood, or some version of that. I think explicitly talked about is the best, but that's my opinion. And it can be a variety of things, anywhere from like kissing, flirting, sexual intimacy, anything like that. And it varies relationship. Everyone can have their own definitions of that relationship boundary. So when these boundaries are broken, it can elicit many different responses from individuals, and all of these responses are valid. So people might feel betrayed. They might question their own self-worth. There can be a variety of emotions and feelings. So hurt, anger, sadness, I feel like is kind of most understood. Some people might feel relief in some ways. But overall, like trust is generally a high mark in a committed romantic relationship. So when that is broken, distrust happens, questioning of the relationship how happens, questioning of maybe one's own self-worth happens. Most research on cheating in relationships is heterosexual in nature, and part of that is because of the isms in our culture. But part of that is also perhaps that most cheating occurs within heterosexual relationships. So almost 88% of cheating occurrence in relationship are from heterosexual relationships, and the average age of when someone cheats or gets cheated on is about 20 years old. So if you think about that age, a rupture in a relationship can be more perhaps more detrimental. I mean, you think about, like, you're figuring out who you are as an adult. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
that's your first intimate relationship, or serious intimate relationship, committed relationship. So it can be more detrimental at that age as well. So not to say that it isn't at any age, but yeah, it's a lot of feelings and a lot of things can happen whenever there's a rupture in a relationship, specifically cheating.
Wow, yeah, I like everything that you said, and I think it was interesting when you went through. Well, first of all, it was interesting when you said that all the responses that people could have to cheating are valid. And then I think also just how you went through the different feelings, like it could be hurt, anger, relief, and trust. And I know we're going to focus a lot on trust, but I was curious at what you meant when you said sometimes people can have a sense of relief when they have been cheated on. What does that mean?
Yeah, so there are different reasons and motives why people cheat, and we can go through many of the most common ones. But like some people might cheat whenever they're just falling out of love. So if we're assuming both parties are falling out of love and no one just like made a move to discuss that or break up or whatever, um, perhaps, I mean, there's probably many feelings that occur whenever someone cheats, but perhaps someone might feel a sense of relief of like, especially maybe in terms of the hindsight, like maybe a couple months or a year down the line, like that was not a healthy relationship. I'm relieved that it ended. Of course, it hurts whenever cheating happens, but like the relationship not being healthy ending part might be more so what the relief is coming from.
So essentially, it's like you feel like, okay, who at least there was a reason to then end it, right? Even though it might have ended, that relationship itself had like died or started dying a long time ago.
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Wow, yeah, thanks for sharing that. Would the way that people respond to finding out they've been cheated on differ based on the circumstances surrounding the cheating that happened?
Absolutely. There are different motives why people cheat. And so I think it would be helpful if we talk about maybe the top ones, and that might help answer this question. So, the number one reason why people cheat is from boredom. So, that's 74%. This happens more with men. It tends to happen more with men than women. So that might elicit a different response from someone if, I mean, assuming that that everyone knows, has the insight, or is communicating why they cheated, right? If I'm bored in a relationship, I'm not saying if someone is bored in a
Yeah.
relationship and they cheat, um, that might be elicit a different response in terms of, are we staying together or not? Number 2 is falling out of love. That is also in the 70%. Feeling neglected is 70%. Mostly that happens from females. Situational, that can be like someone's like, "Oh, I was drunk at a bar and I didn't mean to cheat, but it just happened." There was no intention there. That happens more so for men. And then the last couple are to boost their self-esteem or ego, which is about 50% of people. Anger, revenge, trying to punish their partners about 40%, and just not feeling committed or a lack of love is about 41%. And what the research shows is that if the individual who's cheating feels less emotional connection in their primary relationship, it can result in more intimacy with that affair partner, so to speak. So if you are like just everything I just said, right? If I'm saying you, Michelle, or everyone out there in the electronic world, if you think about all those, like those probably feel a little bit differently if your partner would cheat on you, from each of those motives, right? And think about, could you repair the relationship with that motive of cheating, or could you potentially forgive them or gain their trust back? Um, or how long was the affair? And longer affairs tend to happen if the individual has a lot of anger towards another person, or lack of love or boredom. Where the situational kind of cheating of like, I'm drunk and here, I don't know, whatever happens happens, I don't know what this is, tends to be a shorter type of affair too. So that can impact people's responses to cheating.
I see. My perspective, and also from just like some girlfriends of mine who I've had conversations with about this whole cheating thing. I think a lot of women struggle to understand how men, or the men who have cheated, can say that, it was not intentional. So that I'm talking about the situational one, right? Because I was talking to one of my girlfriends and she was saying like, it's the there's so many steps that someone has to go through for them to, let's say if we're talking about cheating from like a having sex with someone else. So you started by like maybe making out with someone, and then like at some point like you knew every step that you were doing, so that it makes it so hard for someone to be like there was no intention to cheat. So what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean, this is certainly a case by case. I think it depends. So if someone's going, I think you're talking about more of like a club setting kind of thing.
Hmm.
I think someone can never not have the intention of like, okay, I'm going to the club tonight and I'm not going to cheat, or like they don't have the intention to cheat, I guess, or even
Right, okay.
um but I would be curious, as if I have a client who cheated, for instance, I would be curious, like, kind of looking at that subconscious. so to speak? Like, what was going on? Did something happen in your life or the relationship that you were just unsatisfied, or some version of that led to that action? Um, I think that that would be something to be curious about, and I really mean curious and not judgmental, because that
I see.
judgment can be so um, detrimental to all people.
Gotcha, gotcha. Oh, okay, that makes sense. So it's more of non-intentional from the standpoint of it's not someone who left their house saying tonight I'm going to get some outside there. Right.
Hmm.
Okay, got it.
Yeah,
And then you mentioned boredom as the first reason. What was the second reason you brought up?
falling out of love.
Falling out of love. Okay. So I guess this brings another question, right? Is can someone say that they are truly in love with someone and still cheat on them? Do those two go hand in hand? Because I think the reason why I'm bringing this up is because when I feel like most of the times that I've heard of, cheating stories, when the women ask the men who would have cheated on them, what the guys say is that, like, oh, I don't love her. It was just sex, or like, it was just whatever it was, but like, I don't have any feelings for this person. And I think a lot of women always ask themselves, or like ask, well, when they're sharing with their friends, like, is it possible for someone to say they truly love you if they don't consider how you would feel like before they engage in whatever they're gonna engage in?
Yeah, of course. I think that they absolutely can still love another person. Um, yeah, I think this might go into a section of like discussion of like how can that person improve themselves? Because I think the situational, for instance, um, that is more of an impulsive or like in the moment decision of like, okay, I'm kissing someone, and then okay, I'm going to go home with them and do something more than kissing,
Hmm.
or whatever that might be. That's more of an impulsive thing, and that could be something that's worked on. I mean, I as a therapist, I'm thinking in therapy, but like in general too, there's many ways to work on that. But um, I think I definitely see and hear, and I know that's valid. That's a very valid feeling of being like they did somewhat the. I think you're talking about like the male cheating kind of more traditionally, right? The male cheating and the female being like the how could they do this if they loved me? That's a valid feeling, and I think that can go to this like feeling of betrayal and questioning one's self-worth, and self-worth like in terms of I'm fabulous in a general kind of sense, but also self-worth in like who within a partnership, within a relationship, as well. So
Mm,
it's difficult, and that can perhaps be one of the more difficult things of in terms of rebuilding that trust of like, do you actually love me? Because you did something that really, really hurts.
gotcha, gotcha. Okay, that's very helpful. Thanks for shedding light on that. Men tend to react differently to their women cheating than women do to men cheating, right? So like usually the stories that I hear, and like what a lot of people say is like when a woman cheats, it's really hard for a man to forgive a woman who's cheated on them. So I'm wondering if there's anything that psychology has to say on that that you've bumped into.
I would say when it just goes back to gender stereotypes and kind of societal values or views, of like females being more nurturing and caring, and toxic masculinity, and like the F boy. I don't know if we're allowed to swear on here or
Oh,
not.
you can say it. Yeah.
Okay, the like fuck boy stereotype, which like is not true, right? Like not all men are fuck boys or have ever. Not all men have been that. But I
Hmm.
think it would go back to those stereotypes. So like, if there's like, okay, all this is very binary and like stereotypical that I'm saying, but like if there's just more understanding or knowledge that like men are more sexual, so to speak, um, it, there's it just might be different. Whereas females are like the stereotypes, and also the how females are socialized as
Hmm.
well in our society. They're more like nurturing and loving. So if if someone even outside of committed intimate relationships. If someone nurturing or loving or has that unconditional kind of love betrays you in some way, that's a lot more hurtful than someone who you're like, okay, like, well, and going back to relationships, like, well, men are nasty or dirty or this is like in their blood kind of thing, which, like, again, that's not actually true. Um,
Hmm.
but these are just like stereotypes and um the toxic masculinity and so on and so forth that are underlying in our society. I
Mm.
think we're breaking free of that a little bit, or starting to, or tiptoeing around that, but like, who knows?
Yeah, okay, yeah. I think you shed a light on that because I think from what you're saying, essentially, maybe when some men look at women cheating, they can't separate the whatever action happens, if it was like, sex with someone, they can't separate the physical from the emotional, right? So it's more a man would automatically probably go to, you must have had feelings for this person to engage in that thing that you're like supposed to be loving and nurturing. So maybe that could be it as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
I can definitely see that, yeah.
Cool, cool, cool. Yeah, another thing that comes up with cheating, aside for like from like the trust side is feelings of guilt. So a question that I would have is, do people always feel guilty for cheating? And for those that do feel guilty, why do they tend to feel guilty after cheating? And then for those who don't feel guilty, why don't they?
I have never come across anyone who doesn't feel guilty, either professionally or personally. Um, so most of the time people do. I mean, if you think about, like, even if you've fallen out of love for this individual, right? But you still have some caring feelings towards this individual, or just the fact that this person's a human, and you hurt their feelings. You went against some type of relational boundary that was made or created, and it when we hurt someone's feelings, we feel guilty. I mean, we're just like, that's part of being a social creature, so to speak, as we are as humans. So, I think that's a huge part of it. Societal values too. I mean, like, as a society, we kind of we look down on cheating as well, so that can um elicit a lot of shame and guilt. For the people who don't feel guilty, again, I think I've said this before. I think they're probably repressing that guilt or shame because it's hard to feel guilty or shameful. Especially it's hard to admit, like, someone saying like, "Oh, I hurt someone," especially someone I might have cared about. It's hard to do. Um, so I'm more on the side of everyone feels guilty. It's just a matter of, are they repressing that guilt? Is that guilt too detrimental to admit?
Mm. That was very insightful. Just hearing how, you know, you do think that a lot of people do feel guilty, but it will look different. Maybe some people will just try to repress it because they don't want to confront it, right? But it doesn't mean that underneath, I guess at the bottom of their heart, they're not feeling guilty. So something that comes up too with cheating is that sometimes the cheater will confess to the person they're in a relationship with and say, like, unprovoked, I'm so sorry I did this, I cheated on you, and then tell them the story. And then others will cheat and then they'll feel guilty, but they won't say anything. So why do you think some people confess what they did unprovoked, and why would other people not do the same?
So in terms of why people don't admit or why people hide or don't confess, I think that goes back to the last question of, like, people feeling guilty and shameful, and it hurts to know that we've hurt someone, in general. And I don't know, maybe there's another motivation of, like, they don't want to end one relationship or another as well. People who do disclose, the little bit of research that's out there shows that the types of cheating include, they cheat out of anger, or they cheat because they feel neglected in some way in that relationship, or they cheat in because there's no sexual desire or very little sexual desire, or those sexual desires not being met in some way in the primary relationship. Um, so it looks like the type of cheating that occurs might be a determinant on terms of why people disclose or not. I
Mm,
also found it interesting, people might not want to end that primary relationship, So I found it interesting. The research showed about 20% of people did end the relationship, 22% of the people stayed together. And both of those that I mentioned so far are whenever the cheating was disclosed. But 28% of people never discovered that a cheating occurred and they stayed together.
Interesting. Wait, so of the people, so essentially the stats that you've provided have like two pieces to it. There's like people who found out or like knew that they were being cheated on who stayed, and then there are people who just stayed because they didn't know that they'd been cheated on.
Hmm. Right. So it's more or less evenly split in terms of how many people ended and how many people stayed together and how many people never discovered but stayed together.
Interesting. Now, something too that I wanted to bring up as well is, people talk about the sixth sense, which is having a gut feeling that someone is like something is wrong in the relationship. Is it actually a scientific thing?
Kind of. So there are different parts of the brain that are responsible for different things, and they're not always in sync with each other or they don't communicate in a direct way.
Okay.
So there are signs of someone cheating. So someone might, for instance, like actually see a sign, like if someone, if a partner just their availability and their accessibility is just suddenly changes, right? Like they
Mm-hmm.
come home every night after work and then all of a sudden they don't and they're just like not available by text or phone call or whatever. That's a pretty obvious sign. There might be more subtle signs like um maybe they'll be like accuse you of cheating, for instance.
Okay.
Like that's called projection. So people can sometimes project whatever situation that they're in because they can't deal with the stress or they want to distract the other person from reality. So there are kind of more obvious signs and kind of less obvious signs where maybe like so to speak the subconscious and the subconscious are like chit-chatting with each other.
So then the gut feeling comes from the confusion in the signs or not being able to interpret what's going on.
Yeah, so there's probably if someone has a gut feeling, there's probably a reason for that. So if they see like a sign, or I mean, maybe they were cheated in the past and they're just being like paranoid. I don't mean that in a negative way either. That's
Mm-hmm.
understandable. We don't just snap our fingers and we're over our past. So there's probably a reason for that.
Okay. Okay. Sounds good. And like essentially what you're saying is that from some of the signs, quote unquote, or like reasons, some of it could be so clear, but some of it can be like smaller signs. But there is something that actually triggers that gut feeling. It's not like you're just living your best life and then everything is still the same, but you have a gut feeling, right?
Yeah, it's not like someone, I don't know, waved a wand and put this feeling in you. I don't know. But
Right. Gotcha. Okay, sounds good. No, I think you got it. You nailed it on the head. Okay, cool. So, after people cheat, or they've been cheated on in a relationship, some people actually know about the cheating, and it could be that they discovered it on their own. So, like maybe they found a text, or sometimes some of these side chicks, I'm telling you, they're crazy. They'll reach out to the main girl and be like, I'm your man's girlfriend. So anyway, so
Mhm.
either way, some people actually discover like on their own that like they've been cheated on, but sometimes their people actually disclose to them that, hey, I'm sorry I did this, and then they ask for forgiveness. So why is it that some people decide to stay in relationships versus others that decide to leave the relationship?
Yeah, so infidelity is the leading cause of breakups, like whether someone is married or not. Um, I think I think this can go back to like many things that we've talked about already. Like if we're talking about the motives, right? Someone falling out of love with someone else versus like a situational motive, those are very different feelings. Um, and it's okay if people don't want to stay in relationship for either of those. But if someone's saying I cheated on you because I fell out of love versus I cheated on you because I had no intention and I was drunk or something like that, neither of those are okay. But
Hmm.
the falling out of love, like I don't know how many people want to stay in a relationship if there isn't any love there.
I see. So like sometimes what makes some people stay is that like they're more understanding of the motive that happened, or like there's some motives that are easier. Not and all cheating is painful to go through, I'm sure, but like there's some motives that are easier to work through than others. So to your point, if it was situational, but then this person, you still feel like this person loves you and you still love this person, then you could actually probably try and rebuild or like stay together. Whereas if someone explicitly tells you that I just don't love you anymore, then you might be like, okay, you know what, I'm not gonna do this, right?
Mhm.
Mm.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it also depends on like how everyone in the party or relationship handles the post cheating happenings, so to speak. Like is the cheater willing to talk about their motivations? Are they willing to change or work on the reasons why they cheated or like be honest, and can you actually trust each other? It will take time.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, like that doesn't happen right away. But yeah, it can each people in this relationship actually want to work on the relationship? Are they willing to? Can they? Um, does the cheater see themselves cheating again? That's a big one. That's probably
Mm.
not a good idea to continue that relationship.
Wow. Yeah, you bring up something very interesting. Like the very last one that you said. So, like, does the cheater see themselves cheating again? That's a very good question. And I don't think that in the conversations I've had with people, this has come up in terms of like, did they ask their person, like, would you cheat on me? Or like, or would you cheat on me again? Or did the person just come back and say, I'll never do it again? So yeah, I think it's a very interesting one. And I think, you know what, maybe also another thing could be going back to the motives thing for why people cheat. Maybe if it is a situation where it was situational cheating, which is like, okay, this person was drunk and they were in a bar. Maybe to your point, I think something that you had mentioned was even in a case like that where someone cheated because of like an opportunity that came up or whatever, you'd want to know the subconscious reasons behind that. So I wonder if you have someone who's a situational cheater, it could be very difficult to like trust them go forward, because maybe that's the problem they have, right? Is like they are very impulsive. So yes, it happens when they were drunk today, but then it might not happen for another 3 years. But if they're drunk again, they might do it again, right?
Yeah, and everyone has their own desires on like how to rebuild that trust. Some people might say, okay, like you need to work on how much you drink. The alcohol can make people more impulsive than they are whenever they're sober. So that could that is very, in terms of facts, that's understandable that people might do something that they wouldn't do when they're sober.
Mm. So I like what you just said about, let's say, for example, in the case where alcohol was involved, maybe the ways to work on the relationship going forward would be to address the alcohol problem that's in the relationship. So, like, is this person willing to work on like drinking less, right? So that situations like those don't come up again. I guess that's a good piece of advice for like people who face, cheating that was related to alcohol. What other advice would you give or guidance would you give to people who are trying to rebuild trust after someone has cheated? And this is for both people who have, been cheated on, and then also for the people who have cheated who are working to get the trust of their partner.
Yeah, so I think they're different, but also the same in terms of each of those parties. If you've been cheated on, um, and the cheater, talk about it. Discussions are very important. Talk about the motivations. Maybe both parties need an individual and or couples counselor as well, but it's very helpful to help with like communications and insight. Ask yourself if you're, I mean, I think both parties, but specifically, right now I'm talking about the person being cheated on. Ask yourself, like, do you see yourself with a partner who cheated on you? Like, can you move past this? Do you want to continue the relationship? Is cheating like the last straw, or is it not? And also state your needs if you do want to continue the relationship. What do you need to feel secure, safe, valid, that unconditional love to help rebuild that trust, um, and be honest with that as well. It can take time to rebuild that trust as well. And I know like the question of do you want to be in a relationship is a tough one. And there's a lot of emotions that are go on whenever someone finds out that they've been cheated on. So it might be helpful to try and answer that question whenever the emotions aren't driving that answer. So like I always say with my clients, where are the emotions? Like are they in the driver's seat or in the passenger seat or back seat or whatever other seat, right? So if you're in, it might be helpful to answer that question whenever you are in that driver's seat, metaphorically, obviously, and not the emotions. Um,
Hmm.
and, are there any relationship rules that need to be enacted within that?
Interesting. So, like, kind of like in situations like this, kind of taking a step back and trying not to react out of emotion. Is that the whole thing that you were saying about, the driver's seat?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think everyone can understand maybe like the emotions, it's very emotional process, this whole thing that we're talking about, this whole topic. So you can have those emotions and those are valid, but to make decisions with those kind of being the driving force might not be what anyone wants, including oneself. Um, for the cheater for this question, it would be needed for that cheater to really consider their motivations in terms of why they cheated and have a honest conversation with themselves and their partner. Maybe within that, do they still want to be in a relationship? Like if they've cheated because they've fallen out of love, that might be the answer in terms of do they still want to be in a relationship.
Hmm.
The cheater can ask themselves like can they actually work through the reasons of the infidelity, um and that could be on their own, that could be with a professional, um maybe even asking themselves if they see themselves cheating again as well. And commit to, I think maybe the last thing is commit to the needs that the partner has for any relationship rules, so to speak, that need to be enacted within that relationship.
Thank you so much, Kylie. Yeah, that was a very good list of, advice and guidance. And really, I think what I love about what you said is just being introspective on both ends, whether you're like the person who cheated or the person who was cheated on, and just being honest about what you want and then committing to that. And to your point, Kylie, trust is so important, right? And you need to, there's so much, it's like it's something that in a lot of relationships you get the trust kind of like right away from the beginning, but then once it's broken, it's something that's so hard to rebuild. And I think, let's say for example, if I was to speak to someone who would have cheated on somebody else, you have to be able to give that person grace essentially, and like to allow them to ask you so many times. It's probably going to be the same question that they'll ask you multiple times in different ways because they're trying to understand and grasp what happened. So there's that part is like, okay, if you're the person who did cheat, you have to be able to like kind of take that for some time, right, through the healing process. And then on the other side, which is like the person who's being cheated on, I think that it's obviously so hard when you trusted someone and then they broke your trust, and now you're like trying to work through it with them because now you could have been in a situation where you were never someone who would be interested in like checking someone's phone or knowing someone's location, right? But because there's been a breach of trust, a lot of things that you usually didn't care about might be things that you now start to care about. So I think on the other side, if I was speaking to someone who had been cheated on, is to Kylie's point, asking yourself if you can see yourself moving past it. Because I think, yes, of course, like it takes a long time to rebuild trust, but I also think it would be unfair to be in a relationship with someone who's, yes, they've cheated on you and they're trying to prove to you for like I honestly feel like if you get to like 5 years and you're still having this person work so hard to try and regain that trust, that might be unfair on the other person, right? Because yes, they cheated on you and that was like a terrible mistake. But then I think also giving it some sort of time limit. And I get it, Kylie, that like, okay, yes, there's the side of it where it's like healing takes time. I get that. But then can we really go for like 5 years, 10 years of you still distrusting someone? Like, is there something you can say about that, Kylie?
Yeah, I also think the level of distrust, I think, whenever we go through something that hurts, that like is held in our body. I think cheating could be considered like a small T trauma is what we call it, like not like a big is that a well do people know what small T
Oh
trauma is?
no, please
Okay.
explain. Please explain. Yep.
So trauma, usually when we think about trauma, we think of like car crashes, for instance, and that's kind of what in the mental health world we call like a big T trauma. But small T traumas happen pretty frequently. And that a small T trauma could be a result of cheating based on someone's reaction. Trauma occurs based on someone's internal process and what happens to the body, the mind, the nervous system, and so on and so forth. So, um, with that being said and putting that all everything together,
Hmm.
there could be, moments where someone might have like almost like a what can be some people describe as like an implanted thought randomly of like, oh my God, is someone cheating? That might is
Okay.
different than like um I don't think it's healthy if someone needs to constantly kind of obsessively go through someone's phone or check their location. That's not healthy for any of the parties.
Hmm.
And I think something that can be hard to embody but is so important is compassion and kindness for all parties. Like going through cheating, being a cheater and going being cheated on, it hurts. So like have compassion for yourself and strive to have compassion for another person. Compassion for the other person might grow over time. But I think the levels of distrust matter in this question that you're asking.
Wow, so much depth. Wow, thank you, Kylie. Honestly, clearly we can tell who has the PhD and who does not. No, that was really really helpful. Something I also wanted to ask is we always think about this as a binary thing, right? So either you get back together or you stay with this person in the relationship or you end the relationship. Are there some solutions that are in between or like that are different from those two?
Absolutely. I think when we're talking about like what are the needs of each partner in the relationship and how to continue to move forward, what are the new relationship roles? Thinking about relationship roles of like maybe having some form of an open relationship might be helpful and actually might be maybe the healthiest thing that can be done for a relationship. And that open relationships can and often look different within each relationship. So that really needs to be talked about within each party. What are they comfortable with? What are they not comfortable with? And really creating those boundaries. And I understand this might be difficult after someone's been cheated on. It might be a practice of realizing like, oh, I said I was comfortable with this, but I actually am not in terms of open the relationship as a whole, or maybe some action within that open relationship boundary setting kind of thing.
Mm, that also needs its time for people to settle in. It's not gonna be like a flip of the switch where like now you go from like, okay, I'm gonna be jealous if my person is flirting with other people to like, oh, now I'm totally okay if he is flirting with other people or she's flirting with other people and going on dates. So that's a really, really good call out for sure.
Absolutely. And all of these this might change within a couple of months, a couple of years. People might change what their wants and needs and desires are personally or what they're comfortable with the other person. And all of that's okay as well. Just being honest with it is the best thing that one can do for themselves and their partner. The rule setting is definitely important because some partners might not want to know if the other partner has or is seeing someone else, but they're okay with that happening. I think with that is also, I guess, more of a health professional stance of like being safe with that is something that everyone should remember in
Mm.
terms of like protection and getting tested for STIs and everything along that umbrella.
Wow. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, y'all be safe out there. Oh my god. Why did I say it like that? I should stop. Okay.
I like that.
That oh my gosh. But yeah, like people need to be safe. And then just kind of wrapping it all up, something that you did mention a couple of times in this episode was the idea of individual therapy, for the people concerned and then or the people involved, and then also couples therapy or considering couples therapy. So what really goes on in couples therapy? Like high level, or like what is the biggest benefit of couples therapy?
for this aspect, I think anything can really happen in couples therapy, but in terms of talking about cheating and being cheated on, a couples therapist can help work with the people in the relationship to kind of talk about the things that we've been talking about all episode of like what are the motives for cheating, and if that some people might take time to really understand what those motives are. So a therapist might be able to kind of compassionately with curiosity ask questions to help define what those motives are, and help individuals kind of build communication in terms of what their
Mm,
needs are, and just even just communicate of like um, everyday communication as well, and also heal from um, what each individual wants. And I think maybe a misconception for couples therapy is like sometimes the best thing and the most loving thing for individuals in therapy in couples therapy is to end that relationship. Um, Sometimes it is to keep that relationship strong, and the couples therapist can help the individuals on that road to keeping that relationship strong.
interesting. Okay, so essentially, like what you're saying is there might be a fear from like certain people who haven't pursued couples therapy might be it might be because they're fearful of like the therapist kind of telling them that they need to wrap up the relationship.
It could be. Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of people within couples therapy before they go, sometimes they think like, "Oh, the therapist is going to blame me for everything." The maybe more difficult thing within cheating is like what is the person doing that has been cheated on? Like what are they doing or not doing in the relationship? And I do not mean that in like a victim blaming way, but like
Mm-hmm.
if the individual is feeling neglected who did the cheating, what can the person who is like the victim of the cheating, so to speak, how why is that? Like what in what ways can they start to like practice showing their love and um so on and so forth and meet the needs of that the other party in the relationship?
Okay, okay. So essentially, like the couples therapist is an unbiased party in all of this, right? So I was just saying, like the therapist is not there to point fingers.
Absolutely, yeah. There are certain circumstances where fingers might be pointed, and that's only like extreme circumstances, right? Like whenever abuse, or extreme neglect, or if someone's in danger in any way,
Mm,
that is much more like, okay, we need to do something about this.
got it. Okay, okay, okay. So it's like looking out for like the safety of the parties at the end of the day.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, well, this was so insightful, Kylie. Honestly, thank you so much. I've learned a lot from you from like a psychological standpoint because all the times that I've heard about cheating, it's always been from and emotions are in the front seat. And so I think this episode was really good to just kind of think about things from a psychological standpoint and also to just hear the questions, right? Some of the questions that would be asked by a therapist or like things that people should reflect on when they're on their road to kind of rebuilding trust. So thank you so much. This was so insightful and I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been fun. It's been fun for real.
Yeah, and yeah, I appreciate you doing all the research that you did as well. And to everybody who was listening, if you have any questions for Kylie, feel free to send them over to me on Instagram at Unpacking Love, and I will send those over to Kylie. And Kylie will be so gracious, won't you be, Kylie? Kylie will be so gracious to address the questions, and I'll let you guys know what she said. So thank you so much once again, Kylie, and to everyone who's listening, thank you for listening, and make sure that you rate the podcast, guys. Leave those stars, okay? Thank you for listening. Peace. Ndiwe